In many ways, the political firestorm that followed the assault on the U.S. consulate in Benghazi became bigger than the attack itself. Here again is John King.
It was the morning after, in the Rose Garden.
No acts of terror will ever shake the resolve of this great nation.
2 days later, the solemn homecoming for the 4 Americans killed in Benghazi. By then, top State Department officials believed the terrorist group Ansar al-Sharia was involved. And Americans evacuated to Germany were telling the FBI there was no protest outside the Benghazi mission and that there was precision mortar fire when the nearby CIA annex came under attack. Yet 5 days after the attack, this official take on why Benghazi happened.
Our current best assessment, based on the information that we have at present, is that in fact what this began as was a spontaneous, not a premeditated, response to what had transpired in Cairo. In Cairo, as you know, a few hours earlier, there was a violent protest that was undertaken in reaction to this very offensive video that was disseminated.
Former CIA Director Michael Hayden watched from home that Sunday. But Ambassador Rice kept saying, just didn't add up.
The attack was complex, it was synchronized, consisted of individual and crew-served weapons. Whoa, that doesn't sound like a mob at all.
Nearly a year later, the Obama administration's response remains a Benghazi flashpoint.
Al-Qaeda's on its heels and Osama bin Laden is dead.
Republicans say telling the truth about Benghazi might have undermined a key part of the president's case for re-election.
The American people are owed an apology for the misinformation that went on for weeks.
The White House, though, chafes at any suggestions of deliberate misinformation or of a cover-up.
There's no there. And the fact that this keeps on getting churned out, frankly, has a lot to do with political motivations.
There is no disputing this. The explanations have at times been inconsistent, conflicting, and inaccurate.
What we do know is that the natural protests that arose because of the outrage over the video were used as an excuse by extremists.
I heard Hillary Clinton say that it was an act of terrorism. Is it? What do you say?
Well, we're still doing an investigation. There's no doubt that the kind of weapons that were used, the ongoing assault, that it wasn't just a mob action.
Exhibit A in this debate is these Benghazi talking points, used by Ambassador Rice when she made the Sunday show rounds.
The whole issue of this, of talking points, frankly, throughout this process has been a sideshow.
Perhaps, but the administration at least shares blame for what the president calls a political circus.
Though the White House and the State Department have made clear that the single adjustment that was made to those talking points by either of these two institutions were changing the word consulate to diplomatic facility because consulate was inaccurate.
That's just not true. We now know the National Security Council staff was behind several edits, and the State Department vigorously pushed others. The first draft referenced Islamic extremists with ties to al-Qaeda. A second noted repeated CIA warnings about al-Qaeda's presence in Benghazi. But administration emails show State Department spokeswoman Victoria Nuland objected to naming terror groups. She also pushed to delete the reference to those threat warnings. Even after changes, Nuland wrote one draft failed to resolve all of my issues or those of my building leadership. For months, Nuland refused to explain who she meant by building leadership.
Not being transparent feeds people's worst fears and worst suspicions.
In July, she finally told the Senate she was referring to Jake Sullivan, the department's deputy chief of staff and a key member of Secretary Clinton's inner circle.
No, I did not consult with anybody else.
Sullivan is among more than a half dozen top Clinton aides ICE's committee wants to question.
That misinformation, at a minimum, shows a dysfunctional government, possibly shows an intent to deceive.
The official administration investigation, called an Accountability Review Board, was highly critical of the entire state bureaucracy, but found no negligence.
I've called, at times, the ARB a whitewash, and it's offended a lot of people.
The ARB was led by veteran diplomat Thomas Pickering. He twice canceled scheduled interviews with CNN and now says his attorney advised him not to speak with us. But he has in the past defended the integrity of the review.
So Republicans say, aha, cover-up.
Yeah, cover-up's a loaded word. I think it's a question of clarity. We just kind of mixed it all together as a stew and kind of rolled Benghazi into the other events, which were video-related.
Who is ultimately accountable?
Look, this is team ball. There are a lot of people who now look back and said, I could have done that, I should have done that. If I would have done that, maybe I could have prevented it.
So, John, we've seen some of the emails, but not all of them. Do you think we're ever going to really know who made the decisions to make changes in this administration?
The committee is going to keep pushing, the Government Reform and Oversight Committee, and they want to go all the way up to Hillary Clinton's inner circle. They want to see were they involved in the conversations about dropping the terrorist organization name, specifically dropping the fact that the CIA had repeatedly warned the State Department, your people are in trouble. Why was that done? Was it done to protect the investigation? Was it done just politically to protect the department, or more nefariously? Republicans think nefarious, some sort of a protect Clinton, protect the president. Democrats say, that's how bureaucracy works. We're going to see how high they can get in either publicly or privately, getting more emails and questioning the Clinton inner circle. But I will tell you, Aaron, there are some Republicans who say, enough. The bigger challenge is, where was the military? Why were they left at risk? Not so much the talking point debate, but this saga continues.
Right, and hopefully stopping this from happening again. But you say we may never know who was responsible in the White House for the decisions or in the administration. But Arwa, we may also never know who actually committed
And
this
if it
horrible
keeps
crime.
going at this rate, we're not going to know, because you look at what the Americans and the Libyans are doing, and the investigation is basically going nowhere. It hasn't even really significantly gotten off the ground. No one has really been detained in connection for this, and even people who are out there, easy to find in Benghazi, no one is actually spoken to. And the situation in Benghazi, as it progresses, and as has progressed since the attack, is one that is becoming a more difficult, a more challenging landscape to navigate. You go there now, you will see pro-Al-Qaeda graffiti spray painted on the walls. You didn't see this back in September.
John, Arwa, thank you very much. And Arwa, of course, was just there, and she was able to do what, well, U.S. government officials haven't been able to do, catch up with some of the people who might have been responsible for the murders.
Within hours of the attack, U.S. officials and some Libyans were blaming one group, Ansar al-Sharia, an Islamist militia with a base in Benghazi.
Those are obviously the individuals that hated us. Those are Al-Qaeda allied, and they really disliked the West.
The night of the attack, U.S. officials claimed that Ansar al-Sharia took credit. But the organization itself quickly denied involvement. Since September 11th, there has been only one suspect publicly detained in connection to the attack. In October, a Tunisian named Ali Harzi was picked up in Turkey and questioned by the FBI. He was released in January after authorities determined there was a lack of evidence. In May, the FBI released photos of 3 more men wanted for questioning. We took those pictures onto the street.
Did you see this at all?
Here in Benghazi?
Yeah.
No.
No, they didn't put it on TV, they didn't put it on the walls or anything?
I haven't seen this.
No.
Rami al-Ubaidi was an intelligence official with the revolution-era Libyan National Transitional Council, and now independently tracks extremist groups.
The FBI unfortunately released photos of very minor people whom were not known in Benghazi, and the bulk of the people who are behind the U.S. consulate attack are in Syrian territory today.
U.S. officials have identified Ahmed Abu Khatala as a person of interest in the attack, and CNN has learned the Justice Department has filed charges against him and several others. So far, no arrests have been made. But for a suspected terrorist who may have been involved in the murder of 4 Americans, he's really not that difficult to find.
We met with Ahmed Abu Khatala in public at the coffee shop of a well-known hotel here in Benghazi for around 2 hours. He seemed to be confident, his demeanor most certainly not that of a man who believed that he was going to be detained or targeted anytime soon. And he agreed to let us film audio, but not video, of our conversation.
He doesn't deny that he was there the night of the attack.
That night, how did you get the news? When did you arrive, and what did you see?
Is this a journalistic interview or an interrogation?
It's a journalistic interview.
I didn't know where the place was. When I heard, we went to examine the situation. When we withdrew and there was shooting with medium guns and there were RPGs in the air and people panicked, we tried to control traffic.
Did anyone from the American or the Libyan government side try and get in touch with you?
Never.
Never?
Never.
And if they tried, are you ready to meet with them?
Yes, no problem. But not as an interrogation, as a conversation like the one we are having with you now.
But these conversations haven't happened. The chaos and insecurity in Benghazi right now makes it hard to bring anyone to justice for the September attack. And Rami Al-Ubaidi says the Americans continue to fail to see the bigger picture.
The attack was commanded and executed by Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, who today includes former members of the Libyan Islamic Fighting Group, who have merged since with Algerian Al-Qaeda members. So we're dealing with a completely new beast today that has evolved in the last 2 years.
So who is on their radar? And where does the investigation stand? We went to find the Justice Minister.
Well, I'm not allowed to give such information by law. All what I can say is that it is being investigated.
He warns against unilateral action by the U.S.
We hope that the courts will be held in Benghazi, in the place where the crime was committed, and taking out people is something that may not be fair, because those people don't have access to lawyers.
But with no one brought to justice in nearly a year and an investigation that appears stalled, unilateral action may be the United States' only option.
Next, who will pay the political price?
It's Hillary's legacy over there. I had told her personally, nose to nose, please tell me what happened. She did not get back to me.
If you had a chance to go anywhere in the world, but you had to leave right now,